I think the first move towards any kind of justice is to get rid of illusions. And the first illusion we have to get rid of is that we are democratically governed. We are basically in a fast transition to a functional dictatorship. And the definition of a dictatorship is not a system that restricts your personal freedom to choose what kind of food you want, or what kind of music you want to hear, or what kind of friends you want to associate with, or where you want to travel, or where you want to work, or whether you want to take a 2-ton vehicle 3 blocks to buy some chiclets at the store. Personal freedom in a variety of degrees exists in dictatorship, where there's no civic freedom. That's the definition. The freedom to have the power, to participate in the power, to participate in the decisions that affect us and posterity. And that means military policy, foreign policy, Wall Street policy, corporate policy, health policy, tax policy. By those and other definitions, policy to get rid of poverty. But by those definitions, we don't come close to being a democracy. The functional dictatorship that we're operating under is a function of 2 subsets. One is dictatorial rulers who think they can invade, attack, destroy anybody they want in the world, and they can let the corporate supremacists become the corporate conquistadores and drive our country and its economy and workers into the ground. That's one subset. What is the other hand clapping is the withdrawal into personal freedom by the vast majority of the people who feel powerless and they can't do anything about it. So you have 2 illusions. One is the illusion that we're democratically governed, and the other is the illusion that we're powerless.
So let's go with the inducement you have to.
We are not powerless. We are not powerless. The Constitution starts with we the people, not we the corporation. And you can only confirm powerlessness when there is a substantial effort to eliminate it by the people. Is there a substantial effort? I mean,
no.
How many hours are being spent every month to withdraw ourselves from these criminal aggressive wars that are illegal under domestic law, unconstitutional, and illegal under international law? How many hours? How many hours? So the idea of admitting powerlessness only comes from the refusal to engage time, talent, and creativity to overcome it. So those are the 2 functions. In order to get the ball on get the train on the track, so to speak, we have to call things for what they are. It is no longer President Obama. It is President Obama Bush. A seamless continuity from George W. Bush's criminality, which he inherited and now perpetuates in the following areas. Worse than ever in Afghanistan and Pakistan. He still is not out and has no intention of getting out of Iraq. Well, Bush, rendition. Obama, rendition. Bush, state secrets. Obama, state secrets. Bush, indefinite detention, Guantanamo. Obama, indefinite detention, Guantanamo. Bush, surveillance illegal on the American people. Obama, surveillance illegal on the American people. Bush, CIA out of control worldwide, moving from intelligence to operational militarism. Obama, CIA more than ever out of control, moving from intelligence functions to militaristic operation. Do we need to continue? The drones just killed a few dozen other innocent people. They're moving into Pakistan, heavy. Under what regime? The whole scene in Afghanistan is one of imploding chaos desperation, viciousness, payoffs. They talk about the Karzai government being corrupt. Listen, one of the big problems the U.S. Air Force has is how do you get big enough planes to carry enough $100 bills over there? Because there are no more $10,000 bills, or $5,000 bills, or $1,000 bills. They were abolished in the 60s. So, let's look ourselves forward. Here's what we have to do. We have to multiply ourselves. The worst problem is when you join a movement like this, and you spend most of your time talking to each other. Because it's encouraging to talk to one another. You can inform one another, and you can mutually encourage one another. The real frontier is to talk to people who don't know what you're talking about, who may want to know what you're talking about, and who in varying degrees will join you, passively support you, open some doors for you back home. And so here's what it comes down to. In Egypt was a dictatorship, so they had to go to the streets. Now in a democracy, you shouldn't have to go to the streets. You should be able to participate in the media, you should be able to participate in the legislature, in the courts, in the executive branch. They're all shut out here. So we have to do exactly what the nonviolent resistors did in Egypt. So why do we think we're so superior? Do you think the likelihood of Obama fleeing to Tahiti is as high as the likelihood of Mubarak fleeing to wherever he is today? Notice this. Notice this. Whether we like it or not, we've got this type of government. In everything we want done on military and foreign policy has to be done through those three branches of government. And the one branch that's most susceptible are the 535 men and women who put their shoes on like you and I every day, members of Congress. And they all go back home. And that's where the pressure has to be. That's the Khyber Pass. We get through that Khyber Pass and turn Congress around. All things are possible. We allow that Khyber Pass to block us. Nothing is possible. Vietnam ended when people marched, Congress heard, and began cutting off the money. Congress can still cut off the money. Right now, this is a high hill to climb. Unless you break it down, and when you go back home, break it down in terms of not just the vigils that many of you participated in, but how do you develop the congressional ram, the ramrod to Congress, sprinkled through the congressional district, which averages 670,000 men, women, and children. Remember, there are only 535. The corporations don't have any votes. They have money. They don't have any votes. Not yet, anyway. We've got the votes. And that's what we have to focus on. We can have all the marches. If we do not zero in that energy from the marches into each congressional district. You start out with about 95 people on your side. They're the ones who voted for Kucinich's resolution in the House. You're not starting from zero. If we cannot take that energy and channel it zero, laser-like, into the congressional district, we're blowing off steam. And that's the illusion we have to drop. And you'll hear more from this from Chris Hedges and others in the next few minutes. But I do want you to just ponder this issue. If you don't channel all your energy eventually, focus on members of Congress, how in the world are you going to change it? Most of the progressives in this country are indentured to least worst electoral politics. They are not going to abandon Obama. No matter what he does, he can be Bush on steroids. They will not abandon him as long as the others are considered worse, the Republicans. So Congress, Republican or Democrat, they have to be responsive to the votes back home. And that's the tide you have to turn. You've got the majority of the people in the polls behind you. I dare say if you took a poll of the soldiers in Afghanistan, they would come out like that poll in January 2005 when 71% of the soldiers in Iraq said, get out of Iraq in 6 to 12 months, including 52% of the Marines. and the Pentagon did not challenge the veracity of that poll. I think it'd be higher now in Afghanistan. And Veterans for Peace, of which I'm a member, and others, are taking it to the people this weekend. They're going back home, taking it to their fellow veterans, and I hope they take it to the American Legion and the VFW conventions coming up in a few months. The American Legion and the VFW are controlled by leaders who have never seen a war or a military adventure that they didn't like. Knee-jerk leaders. They don't totally represent the rank and file. They don't totally represent a local VFW and American Legion post. Nobody can talk to these people better than the people in Iraq, Veterans Against the War or Veterans for Peace. So support them, raise money for them, to the extent that you can parallel them in terms of what they're doing. You couldn't have better allies. These are people who gone through the Second World War in Korea and Vietnam and the more recent, and they know what it's like, and there's no sit-at-home member of the American Legion or the VFW who can gainsay what the experience they have behind their importunities for all veterans to begin being leaders in the quest for peace, which of course is what our country should be all about, and is what the greatest leaders in our country have ever spoken about, including some of the military leaders like George Marshall and Eisenhower and others after World War II, after they went through what they went through and what they experienced in World War II. So use that very powerful image that reflects substance in the movement of veterans, and you'll see that tomorrow and elsewhere. And bring more people tomorrow at noon. And those of you who live in the district, you make sure that Eleanor Holmes Norton and others up there on Capitol Hill represent what you believe they represent. Not just home rule or statehood, but to stand tall against the Obama-Bush regime. Thank you.
All right.